So the purpose of this is to just kind of review a little bit and give me a chance to sync up with all of you on the experiment that we ran most recently using more AI tooling in the design and development process together. I had some ideas going into it of what I thought should happen and what I thought would happen. And I'm pretty sure most of them were wrong in some meaningful way. And so I think what's really most exciting for me is to just kind of find out how it went for you and just get your perspective on the process and the tools and what you think we should keep trying, keep pushing at, and what things like maybe that were surprising to you in a way that was like maybe we should just not do that again. Um, so I have a few questions, and then maybe we'll just riff off of that a little bit. But I think the first one is maybe if you could just talk about a little bit of the context of the experiment. What made this short engagement different than a different project that we would have done that would have been similar in the past? Like, what were we trying to accomplish? What did we try that we haven't tried before?
I guess I can jump in first. So the specific experiment that we had lined up was we set a pretty constrained time box of 2 weeks. We had myself as the developer full time, and then Katie is the designer, 30, 40%. I don't know what to call your percentage, but no, higher than that. Yeah, more like 60, 75. But we were trying to build an entire working application um, of non-trivial complexity, I guess is the best way to put it. Not a giant system, but also not like, the kind of thing that I would guess we would have used to done by taking like a week or less to plan it and then maybe a couple months to build. I don't know how that time frame strikes you, but it seems like about what it would have been. And the goal was to see like, can we use um, AI driven tooling? I don't know if that was like the only, yeah, primarily that to try to see like, could we actually do it in that 2 week time box? And so we had the client with, a pretty well-known problem that he wanted to solve, and I think that was really important. And then we just started going at it in those 2 weeks. Um, and yeah, what was the original question? I'm sorry, Tim. This is terrible.
You've mostly answered it. It's what was the experiment? What did we do differently? And
Yeah.
hope to get out of it. So I guess I thought I had a pretty good idea of what the hypothesis was at the beginning and kind of what I thought would come out of it. And I was even kind of surprised by what happened throughout it. So I kind of wanted to just get your own perspective, your own characterization of it before kind of going into my own and seeing how that matched.
Yeah, the hypothesis was, I think, like we could actually build a full working system in the amount of time we might have taken to like plan a full working system. And we did. Um, I think for me, the interesting new part of the experiment was having Katie. Like I've tried to do something where it was just like me and the AI tooling, and I came up with an application, but it wasn't nearly at the quality level that I expect from us. It was sort of like okay-ish. But what I really found interesting is like having Katie involved and also using the same tooling I was and being, I felt like we were pretty much on pace as far as like the speed, and like it didn't feel like we were out of sync or anything at all to me. But then like, you know, the quality of the output in terms of how the interface, how well it looked, how it functioned, I felt like it was like now, in addition to being ridiculously fast, it was like up to our standards as far as like the kind of application that I felt good about putting in front of them.
Katie, what about you?
Yeah, I think that Chris, like what you said, we were both able to keep up at that fast pace and we were like in step most of the way. There was, I mean, obviously with you being full time and me being like 60%, I think is what that math works out to. Um, there was a little bit of catch up that I would do at the beginning of my week, but like there was never like a bottleneck. And being able to move that quickly in step, even though I wasn't full time, I was surprised by.
What going into it, what was your understanding of the hypothesis that we were testing, and also what were you hoping to see from the design side of things come out of it?
I guess the hypothesis, like my understanding of the hypothesis was just like, can we build enough of this system to be valuable in a 2 week time span? Um, as far as like what I was hoping to learn from the design side, I was really interested to see how the AI tooling would do with things like sketches. And because I knew like you had said, Tim, like with your playing with it, it would be able to spit out CSS well enough. Like it uses Tailwind, it knows. Um, so like I wasn't concerned necessarily from like the visual side of things. I'm more concerned like can I integrate it into my process? Like I sketch a lot when I'm designing and figuring out what the UX should be. And so can I feed that into it and then let it use that to generate some code? The other thing was trying to figure out how to make the CSS maintainable. So like I mentioned, like I wasn't worried about from the visual side, like what it was going to produce, but being able to do it in a way that's scalable and maintainable and not going to be a pain to update down the road.
Let's push on that for a minute because I did have a follow-up question also for Super Chris about that. So in terms of what it generated and maintainability, um, Tailwind kind of has its ha it has some of reputation, I guess, as being fairly wordy. So you've got these elements and they've just got utility classes for days on there. And it makes me a little bit concerned as a developer having it generate some of that. Uh, what does that actually do for a designer being on the project? Is it making your life more difficult to integrate that into the process? Did you find it manageable? Like how did you deal with the prolific Tailwind utility class writing that it's capable of doing?
I didn't let it stay in its natural state, I guess.
Oh,
So like I despise the like ridiculous length of the utility classes that end up in the DOM with that. Despise maybe is a strong word, but I really don't like it.
mhm.
But so I was playing with how to compose those. There's a feature within Tailwind where you can like apply that. So like I would write my own class names that would be put in the DOM, but then would like compose those Tailwind utility classes within that class name in my style sheet. And then after I did that a handful of times, the AI tooling would actually look at that and use that as a reference. Or
Did you
if
have to
it
do
didn't, I
anything
could
to,
ask it to.
okay, I was gonna say, did you have to give it any like specific guidance or rules about that, or did it just kind of pick up those examples and go?
Sometimes it would just pick up the example. Sometimes I had to tell it to. It just kind of depends.
That tracks with everything I've experienced on the development side too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say the same thing. Yeah. Yeah, the whole like, can it actually do things that are maintainable and stuff we feel good about building on in the future? And the answer, of course, is like sometimes.
Mhm.
But like it's up to you to like insist on it. And like a lot of times it won't the first time, but it might if you like poke it enough times and remind it like what good is. We were talking about like cursor rules earlier in the day, and they're like useful, but they're not, it doesn't follow them perfectly. A lot of times you have to remind it like, hey, and then it'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to write the test or run the test or whatever it didn't do. And then it will do it a lot of the time. And then it's also about like And then some other portion of the time, it just won't. And then it's time to like, nope, grab the wheel,
Yeah, calling them
no,
cursor rules is maybe aspirational, right?
yeah,
It's more
yes.
like cursor suggesties.
Yeah, gentle suggestions that I feel free to completely ignore or not randomly. Yes.
Yeah. I had the experience recently. It's been a rough couple of weeks for Claude. I think I had the experience very recently where it just started writing JavaScript in a Ruby file,
Oh,
and
no.
and comments were all wrong and everything. So yeah, it's definitely not something that I feel like is close to a science yet. But um, so let's talk about the quality aspect of it a little bit. Did you feel maybe some context to this? We've had conversations about this recently where, there's a big thing right now being referred to as vibe coding, right? Where you can just kind of chat with Cursor or, one of the other dev tools and just have it generate entire applications. You're not even like really looking at the code, you're just looking at the output of it, and seeing whether or not that kind of matches what you want. And uh, we've all, I think, recently had experiences where we did that and relied on it a little bit too much, and then came back a little bit later and looked at the code and said, what have we done? This is a monstrosity. And so I guess my question for you is, what impact did using these tools have on the overall quality of the software versus the speed that you got from it? And what did you have to do, if anything, to mitigate maybe the lossiness of translating what you wanted it to do into code versus what if you just wrote the code yourself?
I mean, the biggest thing, and we've talked about this a number of times, the absolute biggest thing for me is insisting that it as much as it is willing to follow the cycle of test-driven development. Generally, I can not very often, every once in a while, I can actually get it to write the test first. I don't know if that's as important for AI generated code, but certainly like insisting that it have a test and then insisting that it run the tests and ideally getting it to the point where it can run the test without necessarily needing to ask permission, because it then uses that to actually iterate and converge on a solution. And then, it's about like not taking the first thing, like Katie was saying, not letting it go off and do what it wants to do a lot of the times. And not only, red green refactor, actually doing the refactor step with it and saying like, hey, this code is duplicated, or I've had really good luck with saying like, this code is pretty confusing and hard to understand and not much more. And saying, and it'll, a lot of time, it will certainly come up with something better, and it may come up with something that's good enough. And if I can get to, it is about like figuring out what's good enough and what you can live with for the speed that you're getting. It's not perfect. I mean, nothing ever is, but there's a trade-off there for sure.
In terms of test coverage, would you say that there's more test coverage, the same or less than what you would normally have done in a previous project if you had done it without the?
Might be more. Sometimes it can be pedantically thorough in a way that I might not be. And
So I've seen that too.
a lot of times I'm gonna keep that, because it's like, it's not bad. It's just maybe a little bit more than I would do or feel necessary, but it's all like reasonable, stuff that I keep. So I might end up with more.
I've seen the same thing myself, and when I end up with more tests, what I would have normally done is delete them, and now I think, well, if they get, if something invalidates those tests because we wanted the production code to change, the bar to actually changing them rapidly is lower as well. So yeah, we'll keep them around. That's fine. As long as it's not slowing down the test suite too much, I'm good with it. All right, so kind of a lighter question. What's the meanest thing that you said to Cursor during the process?
Oh, so many. Oh my gosh. I want to hear from Katie.
I was
What's the
I was trying to
snarkiest you
think.
are?
I feel like the meanest thing I said was like, that seems silly or something like that. Like not really that mean.
Yeah. I'm very frustrated with you and your refusal to run tests or something along. I don't know. Yeah, I was really getting, I've definitely towards the end of the day gotten pretty annoyed with it.
How much do you treat Cursor like a pair versus treating it like a tool?
Yeah, way more like a pair than a tool for me, to the point where it's like, I know it's just a thing, and I know now I'm telling it things that I would tell a human that I know has no effect, but I'm still doing it.
So are you saying you're adding things to the prompt that you know do not affect the outcome, but are just
Yeah,
what you
yeah,
would
I'm like
normally say to
trying,
a person?
yeah, I'm trying to like teach it to become a better developer in a way that like I know as soon as like I start a new session that it's all going to be gone, but
Yeah.
I'm still trying to get it to do better.
I'm still more in like the it's just a tool mindset. I don't know. Mean, I still reach out to Haley and Katie when I've got design things I want to talk
Mhm.
about. I'm more so just saying like, hey, can you do this so I don't have to go through all the files and do it myself?
I want to push really quickly, go back to the one of the first things that you said, Super Chris. You said that this project would have been likely a couple of months. Is that that surprises me a little bit. I looked at the scope, right? And so I saw what was there, and I thought I picked a couple of things that were in like the crucial list, and then I thought maybe we can get the rest of that. And then I looked at some of the other things that were sort of secondary that, wouldn't have necessarily needed to be in. And there's zero chance I would have accepted that full scope as like a fixed bid 2 week project. Like just zero chance unless we had at least twice as many people on the team, probably 3 times as many. And that would have added risk, right? But I guess I was surprised to hear a couple of months.
I don't
Is
know if
that,
that's right. That's just a
I mean,
complete
we're very
guess.
good at estimating things, right?
Yeah, right,
But
right, right.
but I guess that makes sense. It shocked me a little bit to hear that because I wouldn't have thought,
Which
I'm
direction?
an optimist. A little bit longer than I would have expected.
Hmm.
I'm historically, probably famously, a little too optimistic in my estimation. So you're probably right that it would have taken a few months. It just when that jumped out at me, we went from like a
Yeah,
couple of months to a couple of weeks is a big deal.
yeah, and I might have like been inflating the multiplier we got. So maybe it's a month. Maybe we got twice as much. I don't know. I really have, yeah. I did not think that through very hard. So if I did, I would might come up with a different number.
I mean,
I
in
think
But
our estimating process in the past, I mean, if we're going hard card count math,
yeah, do
we
that
got
because you
we
did
got
that.
about 40 cards done in 2 weeks. And typically we say 3 to 5 cards per week is what we would like normally estimate, which would be on the aggressive side, 2 months.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for that
Welcome.
math validation.
I
That's
was
why
I
I
was gonna
love you.
say, so there's a couple of things about experiments that make them different than projects that we would normally traditionally scope. And one of them is when we're estimating, everybody pads their estimate a little bit usually, right? Like you throw a little bit extra wiggle room in there and say, I think this might be a little bit, but I'm not sure. When you're doing an experiment, you're saying, let's just see how fast we can go. You're not relying on any of that padding for anything as well. So it's going to be important for us, I think, as we do a couple more of these in the near term to try to deal in those kinds of realities, like what you brought up, Katie, of what is it actually giving us in terms of what the speed enhancements for the same amount of quality or better versus what hyperbolically, I think we're seeing a lot on social media of like people saying they're one-shotting entire applications and everybody should be afraid for your jobs and everything. I mean, the problem with developing software, historically speaking, from my own perspective, I don't think has ever been the developers aren't typing at their keyboards fast enough and the designers aren't wireframing fast enough. It's rarely that we're the bottleneck in the process when we're developing software anyway. So the more that we can get tools that let us collaborate and do things in more real time with the people who actually need something built, I think is going to be better. So I'm excited about some of those metrics coming out, more of like the card count kind. Just thinking through what did we actually accomplish versus what we would what we would say if we were trying to hype somebody up on the internet about it. Okay, so what was the most surprising thing that happened during the experiment for you?
I think for me, I kind of mentioned it already, but like when I started composing those utility classes into my own class names and starting to use the BIM naming convention, at some point it started just doing that automatically, like consistently. There may have been like a time or two where I had to remind it to do it, but it did. Like it would create a style sheet for her new thing and be like, "Hey, I'm going to make this new style sheet and then I'll name these." And it either was like, "Hey, remember to fill out this style sheet," or it would apply the classes itself. So that was surprising to me that it picked that up.
There was at least some, I'm trying to remember the specific scenario, but like somewhere during the project, it the new 3.7 came out, and I remember like there's at least one thing right after that where I tried it, and I was really surprised how much better it did in terms of getting you know, large features successfully implemented. And then also how much better it seemed to be at like taking feedback about like refactoring the code to make it better. Like I was able to eventually give it enough prompts to make the code acceptable. Whereas I think before that, at some point, I would have had to say like, okay, stop and fix it myself.
I think from also from like the project as a whole standpoint, like after the 2 weeks was over, I was like honestly shocked at how much we got done. Just how fast it went was wild to me.
Yeah, looking at the whole application together when we were done, I was also like, yeah, I was shocked at the amount, but also like just really, yeah, blown away how much better it was than earlier experiments in terms of like the overall user interface polish level that it had. Because we're, you know, it wasn't just me prompting Cursor, it was like a team together leveraging Cursor, and that made a big difference. Because I hadn't done that experiment before, and that was pretty cool.
Well, we're almost out of time. I wanted to leave a little bit of time in case there was anything that you want to talk about um, relative to the experiment. Just just general observations, and maybe alongside that, if you want to answer the question of if you were to roll right onto a project right after this where you couldn't use any AI tools, how would you feel about that?
I feel like I'd be like a little sad. I'd be all right, but I'd be a little sad.
Yeah, I don't know. That's like my ambivalent. Like it might be fun to write more code, even though it would go slower. I also know that like, oh, good. Now I get to make sure that my coding brain still works and I haven't turned it off and let it atrophy. You know, there are times even with Cursor where it's good to go like, nah, stop. I'm going to do this part because you're not doing a good job. So in a weird way, Tim, you were talking about like we should have like a no AI Thursday or some like day of the week where we're just like not turn it all off and do it yourself. And there's something compelling about that. So yeah, mixed. I wouldn't go as fast though, probably. Yeah, almost. Yeah, very definitely I wouldn't.
All right. Any last thoughts? Okay. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and for your work on the experiment. I know we'll have some more coming up, and we'll have some more things to learn from them. But this in particular was a unique one for us, being the first one that had design and development together the way we like to work. So um, just thank you both for your contributions. I appreciate you both a lot.
No problem.
We'll see you.
See ya.